Good evening, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news. Now, yesterday, the Senate rolled back one of Biden's crazier executive orders. Without telling the American people, President Biden quietly signed an executive order where they slipped in the small print a rule that would make Wall Street investment funds invest American retirement dollars and 401ks in ESG groups or investments, basically green energy, or socially responsible or environmentally friendly, nothing to do with turning a profit. This means that instead of having a fiduciary duty to get you the best rate of return and protect your money, fund managers would have to invest some of your money in green energy companies, even if it meant a small to non-existent return on your money. For example, a school system could have invested a teacher's pension fund into a bankrupt solar company to try to breathe new life into the group, and Wall Street would not be liable for losing your money or getting no rate of return. This was a sneaky trick from a president desperate to leave a green legacy. But it means terrible things for Americans, because that means that they would start blocking you from being able to invest in natural gas or oil or things that President Biden has demonized: pipelines, natural gas, LNG, things like that. And the Senate agreed that this was sneaky, and that it was not in the best interest of the American people. So the Senate voted, and 50-46 voted in favor of reversing this unfair policy. In fact, Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Jon Tester, both Democrats, they voted with Republicans and said, "We should not allow Wall Street to dictate where Americans can invest their money. It's their money, not the government money." So essentially, Biden was trying to make your money his money, and he was going to invest it in solar and wind power, and things like that, even if it got no rate of return. So this has now been overturned as of last night. The United States has now approved $619 million in military aid to the country of Taiwan. After the news broke, China stated it will continue to take resolute and strong measures to firmly safeguard its sovereignty and security interests. The United States is now arming both Ukraine and Taiwan, which will likely make Russia's relationship with China that much stronger. However, the U.S. State Department defended the aid by saying the United States' support to Taiwan and steps Taiwan takes to enhance its self-defense capabilities contribute to the maintenance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and within the region. So basically, they're saying, hey, just like we've empowered Ukraine with all of these killing weapons by giving killing weapons to Taiwan, it makes for a more peaceful Taiwan-Chinese relationship. Now, as the United States continues to pour weapons into its allied countries, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Rybakov just stated the most acute strategic threat is posed now by the United States and NATO policy aimed at further fomenting the conflict in and around Ukraine. Their growing involvement in an armed confrontation is fraught with a direct military clash of nuclear powers with catastrophic consequences. While Russia continues to drive fear, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called for a high-level investigation into Russia's war crimes so that they can be held accountable. Basically, what this means is, the more weapons that NATO nations pour into Ukraine, the more Russia views them as being directly in the war, which means that they could at some point declare that they believe the United States is at war. War with Russia. Former president of Russia has commented on the Russia-Ukraine war and its potential nuclear escalation. Dmitry Medvedev, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, warned of the potential nuclear apocalypse if tension between Russia and the West continue to escalate. In an interview with Russian TV, Medvedev said that a confrontation between nuclear-armed powers could lead to the end of civilization and leave a trail of radioactive rubble. He urged leaders to find a common ground, and avoid a potential catastrophe. Sheesh. I also urge leaders to seek peace. But as of today, neither side is willing to come to the table to even discuss how to get out of this war, to stop the killing, to seek peace between the two countries. Secretary of State Antony Blinken had a run-in with his counterpart in Russia, Sergei Lavrov, where he told Lavrov to drop the demand for Ukrainian land and find a way to seek peace. This was at the G20 convention last night. After promising millions of Americans student debt forgiveness, President Biden is now worried that his promises won't be fulfilled, as he faces a Republican-led challenge to his bill in the Supreme Court. Biden stated, "I'm confident we're on the right side of the law. I'm not confident about the outcome of the decision yet. Investor Michael Burry inserted himself into the conversation, stating, "Bailing generations out of those bad choices will mean more bad choices, tuition hikes, and terrible consequences for America." He suggested it would be wrong for the government to bail out student loan debt. Now, this is interesting. Biden wants to give $440 billion in student loan debt forgiveness, yet his White House just announced that there were hundreds of billions of dollars in COVID stimulus and unemployment fraud, and that the United States government and their lawyers will be going after Americans who stole money from the U.S. government. Their official message to the public is, "We have your names, you can run but you cannot hide." So if you steal money from the government in the form of stimulus, or fraudulent unemployment, they know and they are coming for you. Now $300 million of taxpayer money will be spread across 3 strike force teams to go out and collect the stolen stimulus and unemployment money back from the people. So just kind of interesting. He's trying to forgive $440 billion, but then people to get through a pandemic and a lockdown. Maybe lied or took extra money. He's going after those people, right, who were just trying to survive a lockdown. But people that went to school, he's saying let's give them all free education. I'm not saying which one's right or wrong. I'm saying juxtaposed next to each other. It's just very interesting. Now Hunter Biden seems to be in a very bad spot right now. Newly leaked text messages from the Hunter Biden laptop show the Hunter allegedly planned on betraying his former business partner Eric Schwartz, Sherwin Schwer, and claimed that 33% of the company was his. Hunter stated that no contract was ever signed. Hunter stated, Sherwin is literally my worst enemy, and I have no enemies and everyone knows it." So now fast forward to today, Sherwin has just agreed to testify against Hunter Biden and the Biden family business deal. So amidst all this craziness, on top of that, Hunter Biden's lawyer just up and quit yesterday, and said, "I'm not being a part of this, it's about to get really, really ugly." Okay, back to the disaster of the train that derailed and was exploded in Ohio. A local reporter for the Ohio Star newspaper in Ohio has stated a confidential source told her that officials have documented hundreds of animal deaths in the area. The confidential source stated several labs across the country have received specimens of mink, deer, elk, worm, and the liver of these animals, and they are finding that the toxicity levels are off the charts. If it's doing this to animals, what is it doing to the humans that are being told to go back and live in this part of Ohio? The level of dioxin cancer-causing chemical that gets into a body, a person and animal can do extraordinary amounts of damages. So if you're in the area, please be very, very careful. Now you can see why they tried to cover it up. This is like a Chernobyl happening in the United States. And then like trying to don't look over here, right? They're trying to distract people away. According to an NBC article, many Republican senators expected to run for president were asked if they would run against former President Donald Trump. So far, they have all said that they will not be running against Trump. They see him as a former president, but also kind of like an incumbent president because of how much he stayed involved in politics, compared to former President Bush and former President Barack Obama. Folks, months back in April of 2022, you had Matthew Martin, a man who was there in January, acquitted, because video footage showed that a law enforcement official allowed him into the building. So you already have somebody acquitted because video footage served as exculpatory evidence. Okay? This is not an example of this terrible tragedy, and it was a terrible day. It's not an example of Trump trying to devour democracy with mindless supporters, waves of Trump supporters trying to, in a fanatical manner, tear down democracy. That's the way CNN and MSNBC have portrayed everything, because they focus on the chaos and the mayhem and they don't see the entire picture of people being led in. So a man named Matthew Martin, New York Times, CBS News, Law and Crime, Washington Post. And then the way they ignite, a U.S. judge acquits January defendant who said he was waved in. It doesn't matter what he said. The video showed he was waving. That's why he was acquitted. Now, there has been a leaked video that is out there. I don't know if it's a truth. I don't know if it's accurate. But it looks accurate. Tucker Carlson is already on record as saying that the footage that he's seen completely tears apart the Adam Kinzinger-Liz Cheney, Democratic committee panel narrative. Okay. Yes, of course, there was chaos and mayhem. But according to CNN has faded, use the phrase, mostly peaceful. If you just look at aggregate numbers, you can see and would have said it was mostly peaceful. Okay. They said mostly peaceful every single day, almost every single day that summer. And I support why people demonstrated peacefully that summer. But almost every single day you had part of the $1 to $2 billion in property damage. 14,000 arrests, hundreds of law enforcement officials, hundreds and hundreds throughout the country. Injured. Not a word from Kinzinger, or Cheney, not a word from both of them or Democrats after the Dobbs decision, when churches and buildings were torched. And then with CNN, when there was a building in flames that summer, the reporter says we'll fiery but mostly peaceful. This is why 70% of Americans don't trust media. The it's in your face, it's over. It's blatant. They have a specific political goal, objective agenda. Okay. They wants to paint Trump or Trump supporters in the most negative light possible. And they want to tell you that this curfews that summer and 14,000 arrests and $1 to $2 billion in property damage, once again, I support why people demonstrated. They want to just forget about that it ever happened because the underlying reasons were noble, as opposed to the underlying reasons for why Trump demonstrated. But there is no reason to justify the carnage or the mayhem and chaos that summer. It should never have happened. If the issue is political mayhem and chaos, then you cannot allow that even if the cause is just it. But there is a leaked video of the DOJ. It's out there. It's, I believe, leaked from the Tucker Carlson footage from Fox News. And it shows hundreds of people being allowed into the building. This is a problem. If you basically what they need to do is eventually, and they could get Pelosi to testify, they can force people to testify, because there needs to be testimony as to why people were allowed into the building. We already know that defendant May After You Martin was acquitted, because he was let into the building. The question that nobody on MSNBC and CNN asks is why were people that into the building? Why weren't there barricades in front of the building? What happens to those barricades? What happened to those barricades? Okay. There are simple. If somebody asked Kinzinger, somebody asked him, James Comey, or should Kevin McCarthy should ask Adam Kinzinger. What happened to the barricades outside the building? Why were law enforcement officials or people there? And I support law enforcement. But why were officials there opening up the door? Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Open Source News. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and turn on the notification bell.